I mean, if you don't have the right authority or you're not respected by your people, that's going to be problematic for you.
Now, the first thing I think about when I think about growing authority is Monty Python.
You know, my king.
We're being oppressed. We're being oppressed.
People struggle with authority. They
Oh,
struggle
yeah.
with the concept of authority. They struggle with submitting to authority.
Nobody likes responsibility without authority.
Oh,
Right?
it's the worst.
Today on the Half a Bubble Out podcast, Catherine and I are going to be talking about what true authority is and how powerful it can be in your business when you truly understand it. We'll talk about how authority doesn't come from just being in charge. We'll talk about the different types of authority and what types to avoid. And we'll also talk about how to grow your authority as the leader of a company and increase your influence with others. And lastly, we'll describe the 5 skills that, if you implement them, will exponentially increase your authority, which means people are much more willing to trust you and follow your lead, wherever you lead them. So let's get going with our episode on what true authority is and how you can leverage it to accomplish more in life and business.
If you don't have the right authority or you're not respected by your people and your word doesn't carry weight, right? That's going to be problematic for you.
Now, you got people like Jesus in history who over and over again in the Bible had talked about the fact that people were amazed that he spoke with such authority.
My favorite part of that is it always says he spoke with authority, not like their rulers. I always love that part. It just made me laugh like,
Yep.
But people struggle with authority. They
Oh,
struggle
yeah.
with the concept of authority. They struggle with submitting to authority. There's so many trigger emotionally things tied to folks who don't respect authority. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of the things we test for when we're doing hiring, right?
Yes.
How good is someone at responding to authority? Because if they're not, that is also challenging.
Authority is also an interesting word because authority gets into the realm of sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't.
Mhm.
For instance, nobody likes responsibility without authority,
Oh,
Yeah,
it is the worst.
right?
It's the worst.
Well, and when your bosses tell you, or your employers, or anybody who has the ability to say, this is what you must do,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like your job's on the line, or your performance is on the line, or your reputation's on the line, and then they don't give you the tools you need, or they don't give you the ability to
Yeah.
marshal any of those things, then all of a sudden you're in this pickle. It's like, it sucks
Yeah.
to say, I have responsibility without authority.
Yep.
Now, in the context we were talking about earlier, anybody who's given a task, if they're given the responsibility and authority, then those things match together. And you're like, you have the authority to do what needs to get done to do this. Don't abuse the authority, but use it. And then you're free to actually get something done, and you have all what you need. And it's amazing how many people get promoted into positions where their position has authority and power,
Mhm.
and they don't handle it well. They don't know how to handle it well, and they abuse it well. And over time, what people get frustrated with is they like, my position says I have authority. I can fire you if I'm the
I
founder
can
of a small
beat you.
company. I can fire you.
Yep.
But you get into this situation where it's like, okay, all of a sudden you realize they're not doing what you say you want them to do. You're trying to get everybody to pull together. And the reason it's not working as well as it should is because there's a difference between positional authority and respected authority.
Mhm.
And I would say we have 3 groups of leaders in the authority category that we're talking about. We have people who are great leaders who understand authority, and people follow them. They speak with great authority in the sense that people respond to it. And they're like, well, yeah, we're going to follow you. Yes, you said to do that. We will do that.
Yep.
We'll move in that direction. There are benefits and challenges to that type of authority. There are people who are pretty good leaders. They're not bad. They have authority, but it's not as strong as it could be. Maybe it's weaker than it should be. And you challenges, but nobody doesn't like them. They're good. They would be called good leaders. It's the difference between a good leader and a great leader. Somebody who has authority and people respect them, but somebody who has great authority.
Okay.
And then you have bad authority. You have people who abuse authority. And it's like, you have positional authority, but you don't have any authority. I'm not giving you any authority in my life. You have to earn the authority in a sense. And no matter what the position is, It's amazing how much people can disrespect the leader and pull against them
Mhm.
as opposed to pulling with them.
Yep. So how do I gain great authority, Michael?
One of the things we have to talk about, I'm glad you asked.
But,
One of the things we have to talk about is this whole idea of one of the myths that people are born, they're either born that way or they're not.
Okay.
Great leaders are born or you're not. The ability to have that kind of authority is either innately given to somebody or it's not. And that's just a myth. And the benefit of having that authority is compared to trust. What happens when you have low trust?
It takes a lot longer and costs a lot more to get stuff done.
A lot longer and it takes a lot. And why?
Well, if you're in a larger corporation, if there's no trust, then there's lots of legal involvement usually. Like if you're trying to close a deal with another company, everybody's reading every line of the contract and all of those things. So we compare that often to the difference between a contract that is scrutinized and tweaked and adjusted in the hours and hours and hours that takes and the time that takes versus there's so much trust that you can just do a handshake deal.
Yeah.
Right. So you have clients who are like, yeah, there probably should be a contract because that's the right thing to do, but nobody reads it. It's just there. Or there is no contract, right? There's some, like, I think is Warren Buffett that still does handshake deals sometimes. No. He may not anymore.
They didn't do a handshake deal, but what they did is they did a multi-billion-dollar deal, and the lawyers wanted it to drag out for 6 to 12 months to make sure all the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted. And the story goes that the whole negotiation and contract between the two leaders happened in about a day and a half.
Yeah. Yes.
Because
high trust.
Now, there were still contracts and all this kind of stuff. But they knew that they would work things out and they believed that it would be taken care of and the other person would honor it.
Yeah.
But it really is. I like the way you said it, handshake deal. A handshake deal, whether it's a literal handshake deal or that kind of a metaphorical handshake.
Right.
You're still
far less formal.
Yeah. You're still doing that thing and you trust it. So we have this myth that you can't learn it. We have these ideas that lack of authority, even if you have positional authority, if people don't respect you and they don't respect your authority, you could throw a fit like a little baby. Nobody listens to me. Or you can do the things that garner authority, respect, trust.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we come to that place, let's talk about this. What is real authority? I wrote it like this. I wrote some notes. The power or right to give orders. Well, actually, this came from the Oxford Dictionary. I didn't write this.
Good. This is important. Let's not claim ownership for Oxford.
All right. So here's a couple of definitions. One, the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience.
Yep.
Typically what we think of. I have the authority to do this, and it's usually limited authority within a realm.
Right. And I can hold people accountable with some teeth.
Yes.
Yep.
And some people struggle with that idea that you have power.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to have power because I don't trust people to properly use it. So I don't think anybody should have it. And there's that knee jerk, right? Okay. But this is the second one. This was another one. The power to influence others, especially because of one's commanding manner or one's recognized knowledge about something. Example, he has the natural authority of one who is used to being obeyed. He spoke with authority on the subject. There, he spoke with authority. There's confidence. We follow it. That kind of process is really interesting in the dictionary of how we talk about it. But let's talk about sustainable. Really, when we start breaking it apart, this is one of the ways we would talk about it. Sustainable authority comes from or is based on righteousness and justice.
Okay, well, that just took a big old left turn.
Boom. Left turn.
I'm like a little whiplash going on.
So here's the concept. Righteousness and justice. Righteousness builds stuff. Justice makes things right. So before you can actually build what you need to build in your company, you have to make sure that you're administering as a leader justice also. It happens in nations. It happens in companies. It happens in groups. It's just not always talked about like this, but it's helpful. So when we start and we talk about justice actually removes the obstacles so righteousness can build what's possible.
So justice removes the obstacles so that righteousness can build what's possible.
Here, what do you usually think of when you think about justice?
Making things right.
Okay. What else do you think about when you think about justice in our society?
consequences properly applied for good and bad behavior.
Okay. I think about the court system. I think about judges.
Oh,
I think about our law
you're
enforcement.
thinking about literal human beings. Okay,
In our
I wasn't
society.
thinking. Okay, yeah, structures.
I mean,
of course,
structures.
courts, and yeah.
I mean, the justice system.
Yeah.
The justice system actually, in our world, in our mindset, most of the time, the justice system is there to punish criminals. It's there to hold people responsible when they screw up.
Yep.
But that's kind of a common way of looking at it.
It's a little bit limited, though, isn't it?
Well, when we back up and we really look at justice, it is limited. Because justice itself is there to separate the truth from the lies. And that's why what is so amazing about having a justice system is if you go before a judge or a jury, and if it is just, then whatever you've been accused of, if you aren't guilty, it would be the goal. And it's not perfect, but it's a phenomenal experiment in history because it works better than a lot of countries, is to say, I'm going to be found not guilty if I didn't do it.
Right.
Now, there's extenuating circumstances, there's legal laws that, that are loopholes that people slip through. It's like you're guilty, but because you didn't do it a certain way or didn't do something, you didn't get.
But let's just talk about what's supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
Because yes, all those things are going to be true.
Well, and the reason I brought that up is because people right now in their minds are going, so I would be listening to this going, yeah, but, and then I got my bullet points under but. And what we want to do is go, it's not perfect.
Right.
No justice is perfect, but the system itself, its intent is to go, I'm going to sort it out. So there's a story in the Old Testament about King Solomon and the baby.
I remember this.
What's the story?
So the story is that two women come to him, both claiming that this baby is theirs. They've both had a baby. One has died. And a woman is claiming that this is her baby. And the other woman's like, nope, it's mine. And there's a battle that's going on between these two women over the baby that is alive.
One of the women is the mother. One of them is trying to steal the baby.
Right, because she has lost her baby.
And Solomon, in all his wisdom, essentially, gives a ruling that basically seems like the answer is we should cut the baby in half. Calls for a sword.
Yes.
He's going to cut the baby in half.
And as you can imagine, the real mom literally was like, no, she can have the baby. Let's not do that.
And the other woman was willing to take the baby.
Yes. So,
and his judgment was?
We know which one is real.
And he gave it the mother who was giving up, who was willing to sacrifice having the child so the child could live.
Exactly.
And that's a story. Some people might call it a parable. I think it's a real story. But it's an example of wisdom coming in and sorting out from a lie from the truth.
Yep.
And sometimes it's not easy to discern. Justice comes and removes the things that are obstacles so that righteousness can grow. So what is righteousness? Righteousness is allowing the things that need to grow in that place. They are things that are going to bring, in a company, they're going to bring wealth. They're going to bring efficiencies. They're going to bring systems that work. They're going to bring high customer satisfaction. They're going to bring high employee satisfaction. Those are the things we're talking about.
Well, and it's funny because, to hear it talked about, and I think it's helpful to look at it from this angle, because we're talking about administering justice within your company. Most of the time, people talk about empowering your employees to succeed. This is taking it in a specific way of saying, what are the obstacles or the wrongs within the company that can be addressed and fixed so that good things can happen, so that the right things can happen, so people are freed up and the barriers are taken away that would prevent them from being successful in the roles that they've been given.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting angle to look at it from.
Well, and the goal always, as half a bubble out, is to take the whole perspective, the whole viewpoint, and tweak the perspective a little bit, right? Yeah. And to go, how do we look at this differently to find new solutions, new insights that are going to give us more leverage? And in a servant leadership model, which imagine the hierarchy of an organization being a triangle, right? And you're at the top. And a traditional authoritarian leadership is you stay at the top and customer service people are at the bottom of the organization, touching them, depending on what size, if you have a large company. But in a servant leadership model, that actually inverts part of the time. So it turns into a normal model where you're looking for direction, strategy, core values.
Mhm.
Where are we going? How will we behave? What are the parameters?
Yep.
And then it flips itself over and says, how do I equip you to be as great as you can? And if there's injustices going on, I have the authority within this construct to either perpetuate those injustices or to take care of them.
Yeah. How do you grow in your ability to exercise healthy authority?
Yeah.
So,
I think let's reinforce what just happened. The first thing is you have to actually not just be going, everybody needs to be on board with me and in a model of forcing, but you got to figure out how to nuance that. And you want to be able to look for going back to, do you have the right people on the bus?
mhm,
Are they in the right seats, doing the right things? And if these are the best people for your company and they're in the right seats and they have the skills and they're equipped, then that's where you start. And then continuing to be mindful of watching for things that could get in their way and helping to remove that. And if you teach the entire organization, your entire team to keep an eye out, they'll watch out for you
yeah.
and they'll watch for those things.
Well, it's interesting because I think about if I'm constructing a model in my own mind for what good authority looks like, or should I maybe rephrase earned authority?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
My first question is, who do I know? Who can I think of who has been an example to me of somebody who earned authority, right? Who didn't lord it over me, who didn't be like, I'm in charge, do what I say.
Right.
Shut up, you don't matter. But actually, like they had an authority based on how they behaved and how they interacted with me as an employee, as a student, as a whatever, right? So all of us have those people in our minds, right? If you just stop and think, like, who's the best example you can think of in your own life? Could have been a teacher, could have been a parent,
Yeah.
could have been, a mentor of yours, it could have been a boss in a former life before you were the CEO.
Mm.
Because most of us had jobs before we became the CEO. Like, so who is it that models that in your mind? Because I think that's, as you begin to think about that, you can go, oh yeah, that's a person who removed obstacles for me.
Yeah.
That's a person who modeled for me what it was that they wanted to see in me in ways that made me go, okay. Because then if you correct me, then I trust it.
If you don't have models, then the best thing to do is start looking for models.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what our goal is with this podcast and with our company is how do we present that kind of training and equipping and modeling for it? Read some biographies of leaders that were great leaders,
Mm-hmm.
just to find stories that you can collect about just events of where somebody had good authority and was a great leader and
Mhm.
removed those obstacles and empowered their people. Jack Welch was a really interesting guy. He was head of GE for a long time. And when you read his books, he's one of those leaders
Mm-hmm.
that just was pretty darn amazing.
Yep.
There are books and stories out there and biographies and everything else that we can read. Okay, so we think about those things. And so it starts with hiring, then making sure that everybody has everything they need to accomplish their tasks.
Yeah.
When you break down what do they need to accomplish their tasks, there's one concept I want people to remember, and there's 5 things, a checklist of 5 things that we're going to run through fairly quickly for them.
All right. Do it.
The first thing I want people to remember is this: predictability increases confidence. When confidence is low,
Volatility decreases.
volatility
Confidence.
decreases.
Strange.
So there are techniques and strategies that we talk about in our other podcasts and in our book about how you can actually increase the confidence and increase that predictability and mitigate things like volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity.
Yeah.
Right?
Unpredictability yields challenges all over the place.
And for anybody who's going, give me one thing, here's one thing that happens. Clear, concise, complete visions that you know where you're going and what's happening is incredibly valuable for leveling out the volatility in the world today, especially in
Mhm.
today in our economy, political scene, the world scene. There's just it's going crazy and
Yeah.
it's more and more volatile. So having clear direction about where you're going as a company and what you're accomplishing and how you do it is real important.
Yep.
Okay. Then we move into the 5 characteristics of what this looks like. So we're going to start with clear communication.
Mhm.
Have a clear communication model. Learn to have a cycle where you're asking people, ask good questions, answer
Yep.
questions, make sure that it's clear. One of our favorite sayings here is it's not help unless it's perceived as help.
Yep.
So we ask often, is this helpful?
Yep.
If so, yes. If not, I want to know because I want to tweak it.
Well, and another piece of the communication puzzle that we really like is to have somebody repeat back to you what they think you're saying.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Tell me what you think I mean by that so that I know that we're seeing eye to eye here.
Okay, the next one is clear goals. Now, this 5, it's worth saying right now, these 5 are in another one of our videos that we talk about more deeply into these 5 areas, and somebody can watch that and unpack that. But as we go through these, the next one is goals, and we're always looking really quickly at SMART goals.
Yep.
They're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely.
Yep.
So making sure that we're clearly communicating and we're clearly communicating clear goals. Again, that goes back to that clarity of where are you going as a company, but what is your role in it and what are your responsibilities? And so this is what your responsibility is. It's clear. And hopefully you've got authority for that.
Yep.
Accountability.
Yeah. So that's just the ability to like loop back around. Did you do what you said you would do? Did I do what I said I would do? So holding each other accountable. But when you have those goals and you've been able to define with clarity, this is what done looks like, then that final loop of going is done what we really needed it to be. And if not, where did we go wrong? So that clarity and that accountability, that continued revisiting of the process.
Absolutely. And we can see how these are connecting to authority. The idea that if you can't clearly communicate, if you're all a bunch of fuzzy this and backwards words and everything else, it's like, why would anybody trust you? Why would anybody allow you to have authority over them? That earned authority is not happening because I'm not even sure if you're safe. I'm not sure if you're trustworthy.
Right.
That whole idea of your goals aren't clear. They're muddy.
Well, and there's nothing harder on your team than if you as a leader are like, this is what I need you to do. And then they do it in the way that they understand. And then they come back and you're like, I didn't ask you to do that because you don't remember a conversation or what you had envisioned in your mind because apparently the communication wasn't clear and what they understood was not aligned. I mean, that is very disconcerting for employees. And so it's just really important that we have that loop really clear. They understand. And
here's a tip. If you're a leader and that's happening to you, where people are coming to you and saying, you said to do this, and you're like, I never said to do that. Pause a moment, because at times we get so busy in our memory slips. Ask, when did I say that and how did I say it?
Yeah.
And possibly start getting to a place where your assignments aren't verbal, but they're written down.
Yeah.
I would like to see the email. And you may be surprised that you actually wrote that email and you don't remember.
It's entirely possible that you might have to usher the words, I was wrong and you were right.
It's possible. Okay. And accountability. Accountability is that idea of also, if I have authority, I will do what I say I'm going to do. But there's the other side of that where you go, I'm in charge of you. I have power over you. I have authority over you because of my position. So I'm telling you to behave one way and I'm going to behave another.
Yeah, don't do
as
that.
I say, not as I do.
Yeah, don't do that.
And don't model it.
Don't model it. It's bad.
So
it's just bad.
It's bad. Okay.
Just bad.
Trust is the 4th one. And
we've been talking about
trust, but trust is competence and character.
Yep.
And there are 13 behaviors of trust that we unpack in other videos that are really powerful. There is a structure and a thing that the myth is trust is not measurable. It is measurable.
Well, and it's also a myth that if you break trust, it's hard to regain. And then the truth is there are specific attainable ways to rebuild trust.
Absolutely. And
we're gonna,
in many ways.
Because we're going to screw up. So it's pretty important that we know that there's hope and ways to build it back up, because even the best of leaders who's exercising good authority and good leadership most of the time is going to screw up.
Yep.
So,
and then the final one is when you're working with people, do public recognition. There are plenty of leaders who have taken all the glory for themselves. They never share it with anybody, or they never even tell people, I really appreciate your work. and the idea that we all want to be respected amongst our peers and respected by those in authority over us.
Yeah. I mean, there are just caricature stories and songs about the evil leader who blames everyone if it goes wrong and takes credit for everything if it goes right, right?
Yeah. These concepts go back to how do we remove obstacles and so that the right things can build. And the right things are going to allow people and set them free to be able to build a great job, your company, because they're all there to work to grow your company.
Mm.
And as leaders, if we understand that and we can continue to remind ourselves that this whole concept of earned authority in this context that we're talking about within justice and righteousness, it actually sets us free to focus on the more important things we have in our company, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it sets up an organization that runs in an extremely healthy manner.
Yeah.
But your job as a leader is to set the vision, remind people where we're going and why and how, and then make sure that they have the resources to move forward.
Yep.
If you have those things, if you know what to do next, why it's important, communicate to other people and give them the resources for it, they're going to help you be successful.
Yeah. So it's not just a model where it's what is the myth? He who has the gold makes all the rules. Right?
It's not just
it's
that.
not that. Can't be just that myth.
And so that's a deeper discussion of authority, more than anything else, for our leaders to think about.